From 1977 to 1983, three Star Wars films redefined science fiction and grossed over $1 billion worldwide. During that same stretch, the number of space-themed movies released by other studios more than tripled. Some were blatant rip-offs, some were passion projects, and a few, against all odds, became cult classics. And no one moved faster than Roger Corman. Battle Beyond the Stars follows a young farmer named Shad who lives on the peaceful agricultural planet Akir. When a ruthless warlord named Sador threatens to annihilate the planet with a superweapon, Shad leaves in a talking spaceship named Nell to gather a team of galactic mercenaries. Each fighter joins for their own reasons, including revenge, boredom, or honor. Together they form a mismatched defense force that faces overwhelming odds when Sador returns. The story was inspired by The Magnificent Seven, and before that by Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. But the real legend behind the camera is where the movie gained its legacy. James Cameron, who was an unknown 20-something at the time, was hired to work in the model department and was quickly promoted to art director. He spent most nights sleeping on set, repurposing junkyard scraps into detailed spaceship walls and panels. He painted fast food containers, glued together wires, and transformed trash into something cosmic. Cameron's obsessive detail and lack of sleep during the shoot turned the low-budget production into an accidental film school. Even future A-listers like Bill Paxton helped build the sets. It was a Roger Corman movie made with bargain bin tools, but it became the testing ground for some of the most important sci-fi creators of the next 2 decades. Starcrash opens with Stella Star, a fast-talking outlaw zipping through deep space with her psychic sidekick, Octon, barely staying ahead of the space cops. They get roped into a last-ditch mission by the Emperor himself to stop Count Zarth Arn's weaponized space fortress and recover his missing son. The plot unfolds like a half-remembered dream, where giant robots, Amazon warriors, and cavemen with torches all somehow share the same galaxy. Caroline Munro, already known for her Hammer horror roles, was cast partly for her bombshell appeal. She filmed nearly every scene in high boots and a leather bikini, even while running through snow or dodging lasers in radioactive zones. Between costume malfunctions and camera flubs, editors sometimes stitched together different takes where her outfit changed mid-shot, turning continuity errors into cult trivia. David Hasselhoff made his cinematic debut here, spending most of his scenes in eyeliner and armor, swinging a plastic lightsaber knockoff. He later described the production as chaotic and surreal, joking that he didn't fully understand the plot until years later. Christopher Plummer agreed to play the Emperor only because it filmed in Rome, and he wanted a family vacation. He memorized his lines fast, filmed for 2 days, then disappeared to sightsee. Director Luigi Cozzi claimed he based the movie on a novelization of Star Wars, since he hadn't seen the film itself, though it somehow includes laser swords, gold robots, and trench runs. The Last Starfighter centers on Alex Rogan, a teenager stuck in a desert trailer park who finds escape and ultimately a new identity through a mysterious arcade game. After beating the high score, he learns the game was a recruitment tool built by an alien force to find starfighter pilots. He's whisked away from Earth and thrust into an intergalactic war, flying a prototype spaceship alongside a lizard-like co-pilot named Grig. The movie rides the same wave of Chosen One heroism as Star Wars, but swaps out mystical destiny for something a little more grounded in 8-bit dreams. Behind the scenes, things weren't quite as magical. The production leaned heavily on brand new computer graphics, rendered using a Cray supercomputer that constantly overheated and crashed, delaying visual effects for weeks. Actor Lance Guest performed most of his cockpit scenes inside a real hydraulics rig, and got bruised and briefly concussed more than once from the whiplash. Will Wheaton filmed a supporting role that was cut entirely, and only found out when his family showed up to the premiere, expecting to see him on screen. The CGI, crude by today's standards, was a technical gamble that nearly collapsed the film's budget, but also helped push digital effects forward by years. The Black Hole begins with a lost spaceship floating near a dark and ominous void in space. A small crew investigates and discovers a massive research vessel parked dangerously close to the event horizon, commanded by a haunted genius named Dr. Reinhardt. The film tries to blend 2001-style existentialism with Star Wars-inspired robot action. But what makes it memorable isn't the plot, it's how completely strange it gets. The story veers into religious symbolism and ends with a surreal depiction of heaven and hell inside a black hole. Behind the camera, Disney was going through an identity crisis. The studio wanted to shed its squeaky clean image and catch up with the edgier, space race Hollywood, but internal conflicts tore the production apart. 3 directors cycled through before Gary Nelson took over, and original writers were fired for pushing a darker tone. Anthony Perkins, known for Psycho, was nearly injured by the robot Maximilian spinning blades during his character's death scene and refused retakes. Maximilian Schell, who played Reinhardt, refused to break character and stayed in mad scientist mode even between takes, unnerving the cast. The movie ended up split between 2 warring creative camps, one pushing psychedelic horror, the other clinging to family-friendly sci-fi, and the result was something beautiful and deeply confused. Message from Space opens with 8 mysterious seeds scattered across the stars, sent by the dying planet Jalusia as a desperate call for heroes. What follows is a fragmented, chaotic journey where reluctant fighters from wandering pilots to royal heirs find themselves pulled into a cosmic war they barely understand. The story skips between bizarre planets and half-formed plot lines, never quite explaining how any of it fits together. But that loose structure is part of what gives the film its strange charm. Vic Morrow, the American actor cast to boost its global appeal, reportedly clashed with the Japanese crew almost from day one. He didn't understand what was being asked of him, and he didn't hide his frustration. Language barriers led to miscommunications, and rumors suggest entire scenes were rewritten or dropped because no one could agree on the script. Costumes and props were reused across different roles, sometimes appearing in the same scene twice. In one sequence, a character floats in space without a suit. Despite these issues, it was Japan's most expensive film at the time, and it shows sometimes beautifully, often incoherently. Critics mocked it, fans quoted it, and decades later, it's remembered less for its plot and more for the energy of a production trying to outrun Star Wars with cardboard sets and pure momentum. Masters of the Universe follows He-Man, a warrior from the planet Eternia, as he battles Skeletor to recover a powerful cosmic key that's been lost on Earth. Most of the movie takes place not in space, but in a sleepy American suburb, where He-Man and his crew team up with two teenagers to stop Skeletor's invasion. It was meant to feel like Star Wars with swords and synths, but the end result drifted into something much stranger, a collision of sci-fi ambition and toy commercial logic. Dolph Lundgren played He-Man, though the crew had so little confidence in his performance that most of his lines were rewritten or trimmed during editing. Director Gary Goddard rewrote scenes on the fly to shift attention towards Skeletor, played by Frank Langella, whose intense theatrical approach gave the villain more emotional weight than the story could hold. The studio ran out of money before filming wrapped. During the climactic battle, production was literally shut down, forcing Goddard and a skeleton crew to sneak in and finish key shots without permits or lighting. The chaos on set mirrored the strange compromises behind the scenes. Mattel's toy restrictions, budget cuts, and creative disagreements pushed the film into cult status, not because it succeeded, but because of how confidently it stumbled. Space Raiders starts with a gang of space pirates stealing a freighter, only to discover a young stowaway named Peter, who just wants to go home. Their leader, Hawk, once a decorated officer, now lives on the edge of the galaxy as a mercenary. The crew doesn't want a kid on board, but they end up dragging him along anyway, chased across star systems by corporate bounty hunters. Over time, Peter begins to bond with the pirates, especially Hawk, who finds himself pulled between old loyalties and the life he chose. Roger Corman produced the movie as part of a 5-film commitment after selling New World Pictures and built the entire production out of spare parts. The space battles and ships were taken directly from Battle Beyond the Stars, and even the music was recycled from that movie. Howard R. Cohen had little directing experience, so Corman brought in Eric Morris right before filming started to help manage the shoot. The whole movie was stitched together fast, with reused props, mismatched footage, and an unpolished energy that everyone on set felt. It ended up being more of a patchwork experiment than a traditional film, remembered today mostly for how obviously it reused everything it could. Spaceballs centers on Lone Star and Barf as they race across the galaxy to stop Dark Helmet and President Scroob from stealing the air of planet Druidia. Princess Vespa is kidnapped, Yogurt teaches the power of the Schwartz, and a Winnebago flies through space. It's a parody that gently elbows the ribs of every major sci-fi trope. Mel Brooks wrote the script quietly and pitched it as a family comedy to avoid studio hesitation. George Lucas gave his blessing with a few conditions, including no merchandise that could compete with Star Wars toys. On set, Rick Moranis shaped much of Dark Helmet's personality with his own improvisation. The helmet was oversized and difficult to wear, but Moranis leaned into the awkwardness, crafting scenes that regularly made the crew laugh off camera. John Candy's performance as Barf meant long hours and full dog makeup, which he called both fun and exhausting. Laureen Yarnell, a mime, played the body of Dot Matrix, while Joan Rivers recorded the voice separately, and the two never actually met during production. Mel Brooks himself wore thick prosthetics to play Yogurt, insisting on doing it personally despite the discomfort. With a limited budget and a tight schedule, the cast and crew found ways to keep the set inventive and collaborative, which helped the movie grow into a cult favorite after its modest theatrical run.